That was great. Thank you so much, Professor Slater, and thank you, Will, and the Palestine Center. I'm going to take a slightly different tack with my remarks, although during question and answer I'll be happy to answer any sorts of questions. I'm not going to really talk so much about sort of my personal, why I'm involved in this issue personally, but sort of how Will introduced me, that I come from more of an activist background. That's true. Before working at the American Friends Service Committee, I helped start an organization called Jews Against the Occupation in New York City, which was very much involved in sort of on-the-ground activism, protesting, things like that. The AFSC, as many of you probably know, is a much larger nonprofit organization. It did work both around the United States and in the region itself. And one of the things that struck me from that experience is doing that type of activism was extremely effective in working with people one-on-one and moving people one by one and doing work in the region that's really necessary and doing work in the US that's really necessary. And yet it still always felt that there was a larger conversation happening about the issue that we weren't really involved in, or occasionally we would be able to break into that conversation, but this larger discourse around the conflict, around what's happening on the ground, was one that we weren't really involved in as activists. And so when I made the decision to leave AFSC and get involved with Mondoweiss, one of the reasons for that was to get involved in this conversation, to help change the way that the conflict is understood, discussed, and the news that people get to discuss it with. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the site itself, although I'm happy to, but just to say that, Professor Slater talked about the incredible work that he does on his website, and we play sort of a different role. I mean, one of the roles that we play on Mondoweiss is just a news aggregator. We get news that people send us. The best case scenario for me is when we get news directly from the region, like we did yesterday with the protests happening in Silwan, and we're able to publish that. Getting out news that you really don't get in a lot of other places except on the web. I'm not saying only on Mondoweiss, but like in the introduction, it's not in the newspaper in the same way. I think one of the other important roles that we play, and this is something that we could talk about during the discussion as well, because it hasn't really come up yet, is that we are a meeting place for people who are interested on the issue. One of the things that I hear often from people who come to Mondoweiss, who read Mondoweiss, is, in my community where I am, I don't know anyone else who thinks the way I do about this issue. That might be a little hard to believe here in DC when you have places like this, like the Palestine Center to come to, or I'm in New York, and so there's a lot of opportunities. But there are a lot of people in other parts of the US and other parts of the world who don't have that sense of community, and they are able to come to a website like Mondoweiss or many others and feel that they are a part of something that's larger, and that that they aren't crazy. Or maybe they are crazy, but there are other places that they could go to discuss this. So I think that's one of the other important roles that our site and sites like it play, and something that the internet provides in a different way than other organizations or other kinds of things I've been involved in. Something though that I wanted to share to kind of kick off this conversation, because our first panel here is about that discussion around the discourse and the role that sites like these can play in it, is I just wanted to read a section from a chapter that I wrote along with Philip Weiss, who is the other co-editor of Mondoweiss, for a book called Midnight on the Mavi Marmara, which is a wonderful book if you have a chance to pick it up. But we wrote a chapter in there about how the growing understanding of conditions on the ground in the occupied territories is shifting the discourse around how the conflict is discussed and understood. And this is going to be referring to the Israeli attack on Gaza, Operation Cast Lead, and the assault on the flotilla. The awareness of the conditions on the ground was seen in a shift in the discourse surrounding the flotilla attack. especially online, as internet journalists, led by Ali Abu Nima, repeatedly expose Israeli Hasbara. This awareness penetrated the establishment media as well, as the New York Times website. On the New York Times website, Robert Mackey's lead blog cataloged the work of those discrediting Israeli spin. He highlighted Max Blumenthal's reporting on doctored IDF audio and Noam Shezov's work on Turkish photos on the Mavi Marmara that contradicted IDF claims. Other significant reporting included Leah Terechansky and Max Blumenthal's work disproving IDF claims that the flotilla was linked to al-Qaeda, Jared Malson's work confirming the use of the doctored audio, and Abu Nima's reconstruction of the path of the Mavi Marmara to show that it was actually fleeing at the time of the Israeli attack. Despite the Israeli Foreign Ministry's best efforts, these internet journalists were able to shape the story and fill crucial voids in the narrative of the attack that persisted in large part because Israel refused to release the entirety of the video and still footage that it confiscated from the flotilla passengers. In the past, Israel's control of the story of the conflict, especially in the West, had been the source of enormous power. But now we see that power breaking down at an incredibly swift rate. The one quote-unquote success of their Hasbara efforts was a racist We Are the World knockoff video that really only confirmed how absolutely tone-deaf many Israelis were to feelings around the world. In another age, novelist Leon Uris helped supply a narrative of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that survived for generations, but today that story is being told over the internet. Portions of the attack on the Mavi Marmara were broadcast nearly live over a live stream video channel online. In addition, several filmmakers on board were able to smuggle off footage, most notably Iyar Ali from the Cultures of Resistance project, and that footage helped contradict the official Israeli version of events. So far, Israel has not found an effective response to this democratization of the media. And who knows, before long, people might even start discussing how Gazans ended up in Gaza in the first place, the Nakba of 1948. I mean, who's going to believe a land without a people for a people without a land when there are at least 10 YouTube videos to prove it wrong? I'll just leave it at that for now.